Hello everybody. This is my live event for Paranormal Warwickshire. And I hope when you join me, you'll let me know you're there, and then I'll know I can answer questions from you. Hello Marissa. Thank you. Welcome. I was waiting for somebody to turn up. Jamie, welcome Jamie. Lovely to know you're here. Hello Philippa. Hello. In a short while, I'll be reading from my book, Paranormal Warwickshire, which is out today. I'll start by reading from the introduction, and then I'll see what else you'd like me to read to you. Hello, Fran. Lovely to see you. Glad you could get here. So today's the day the book is released, finally. And I've certainly been promoting it a lot over the past several months, actually, because of the lockdown. And it was supposed to be published first in June this year. Then it was going to be published in September, and finally it's out today. So I can hardly believe it. So anyway, if any of you would like to ask me questions about the book, please do put them in the chat. So I'm going to start by reading the introduction to you. And as you may know, I have used a theme of Shakespeare's ghosts and spirits in this book because this is Shakespeare's county. He was born in the town of Stratford upon Avon, and he was a son of Warwickshire, although he spent quite a few years in London with his troupe, the King's Men, and he made his money in London. But he returned to Stratford upon Avon to spend his final years in his beautiful manor house in Stratford upon Avon, and where it is thought he wrote his play The Tempest. So my theme is Shakespeare's ghosts and spirits. So I'll just open by reading with you the introduction to the book. I have heard, but not believed, the spirits of the dead may walk again. And these words come from The Winter's Tale, Act 3, Scene 3. Did Shakespeare believe in ghosts and spirits? We cannot say for sure, but they make frequent appearances in his plays. It is known that he himself played the spirit of Hamlet's father many times, and it was at the top of his performance as an actor, according to his first biographer. This is the ghost of whom Hamlet says, "The spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape." But throughout the play, Hamlet continues to agonize over the true nature of the spirit he has seen, despite the opinion of his sceptical friend Horatio, and he reaches different conclusions according to his state of mind. Ghosts and spirits made excellent dramatic devices, but does their presence in Shakespeare's plays denote something much deeper? It's true that his county, Warwickshire, is saturated even today in strange events for which there is no scientific explanation. Warwickshire has been my home for 25 years at the time of writing. I've grown to love this county's most iconic locations, castles, houses and churches, and also some of its less familiar ones. All these places have rich and complex stories to tell, as befits the county of Shakespeare. Those stories bear witness to the fact that energy lingers in many places other than manor houses, abbeys and castles. They also tell of ordinary people going about their business in a day-to-day environment. Shopkeepers and sales staff, pub customers, families in terraced houses, trespassing teenagers and busy rail commuters. And some of the stories are those the narrators kept to themselves for a long time for fear of being ridiculed. Our task here is simply to listen to the stories that people tell and, like Hamlet, to explore the nature of these strange experiences, both with our hearts and our minds, and reach our own conclusions. Now let's see if any of you have any questions. This is all new to me, so I'm not necessarily doing the right thing. Hello Victoria, thank you for your congratulations. Hello Alison, and hello Philip, glad you got here, you're in the right place. Hi Wendy and Ruth, glad you're here. Nick, thank you for turning up. Bev, lovely to see you. Philippa. And Wendy has a question. So Wendy wants to know, where did your interest in Shakespeare's ghosts and spirits come from? Now, this is interesting because I think I was quite young when I first came upon Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I was born and brought up in Orpington in Kent. And we used to go a lot to beautiful castles and some amazing places in Kent as well. And one of those is Hever Castle, and in the garden there, as is the case with many other great stately homes and castles in England, they always have plays, outdoor plays every year. And at Hever Castle they would perform A Midsummer Night's Dream. They had I'm trying to think what it is. It's a great archway before the lake there, and Puck, the spirit, the mischievous fairy Puck, appeared on the top of this archway just before the lake, and it was just amazing. And I remember what a huge impression that made on me. So so I would say very early on I was aware of certainly Midsummer Night's Dream and Shakespeare's use of magical creatures in his plays, and I always felt even then he was saying something different while using these supernatural beings in his plays. So I noticed Fran says all the best people are from Warwickshire. Yeah, definitely. And Philippa has often visited Warwickshire and Stratford upon Avon. Oh, I love going to Stratford upon Avon. I just love wandering around the River Avon and wandering around the canal there, the Bancroft Gardens, and of course I'm looking forward to when the Royal Shakespeare Theatre is opening again, which hopefully it will, for a socially distanced performance, I think, of festive treats in the Royal Shakespeare Theatre around about Christmas. So I'm looking forward to that. So would any of you, now I can read a chapter of my book, and perhaps you might like to say which you would like. I can read to you my chapter about Guy's Cliff House in Warwick, or I can read to you my chapter about the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. So I'll tell you some of the places that are in this book are Warwick Castle, St Mary's Church, Warwick, Kenilworth Castle, Stoneleigh Abbey, and then of course several locations in Stratford upon Avon, and a number of locations in Rugby and Nuneaton and Leamington Spa. Now Philip has asked an interesting question. Do you think believing in ghosts and spirits is compatible with Christian faith? Well, the Christian faith is a very supernatural faith, and I don't think it would be a Christian point of view to rubbish these stories or to say that you don't believe them. I think the key to this is that Christians are warned to keep away from the demonic, and I respect this. And so in this book, when I was researching for this book, if I thought anything was demonic, I have not included it in the book. But a respect for the supernatural is very much part of the Christian faith. And Ruth says here that she would like me to read about the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Lovely. So let's see, I can find the chapter in my book. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. And that comes from the prologue to Henry V. Meanwhile, Puck, in A Midsummer Night's Dream, when he comes upon the lovers in the wood outside Athens, he says, "What? Oh no, sorry, I've got that wrong. He comes upon the rustic yokels rehearsing their play, and he says, 'What a play toward! I'll be an auditor, an actor too, perhaps, if I see cause.'" And we know, of course, that Puck does quite a lot of acting and interfering with the goings-on amongst the rustic yokels. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre stands on the waterside in Stratford-upon-Avon, on the same piece of land formerly occupied by Shakespeare's garden when he lived at New Place from 1597 to 1616. In 1875, the then owner, Charles Flowers, donated the site to the newly created Shakespeare Memorial Theatre Limited, Incorporated. The theatre itself opened 4 years later. Following its destruction by fire in 1916, its fortunes soon rose again with the appointment of a young architect, Elizabeth Scott, who was commissioned to design a new theatre on the site adjacent to the burnt-out building. Some of the theatre fraternity think Elizabeth still makes her presence known here today. Her new theatre opened in 1932. 28 years later, the Royal Shakespeare Company was established and the building renamed the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. In the early 1980s, the original burnt-out shell of the Victorian building was converted to the Swan Theatre. But no matter the changes to the building, the ghostly apparitions persist. In 1995, the transformation project was first proposed. The plans were met with strong resistance from devoted theatre-goers and actors alike, for whom the theatre was a spiritual home. To pull down the original fabric of the building that had resonated to the voices of so many renowned actors seemed like sacrilege. Many of the present-day actors insisted that part of the original fabric of the old theatre should remain, not only as an act of homage to the history of the Elizabeth Scott Theatre, but also in response to their feeling that somehow the spirits of their great predecessors were absorbed into the fabric of the building. So, when work began in late 2007, the relic wall was preserved, and it remains there today, adjacent to the Riverside Cafe on the ground floor, and a predominant feature of the rooftop restaurant covered with posters of productions from the time of the Elizabeth Scott Theatre. Also, an urn containing the ashes of Sir Ian Richardson, who died on the 9th of February 2007, was placed into the foundations of the auditorium during the renovation, so the theatre was transformed. It seems that many who have loved this theatre in their lifetimes cannot turn away from this magical and evocative place. Ghost stories emanate freely from the building, judging by the ease with which the theatre staff tell them. A grey lady is often seen. She appears so real, she is often mistaken for a lost theatre-goer. She is thought by many to be the spirit of Elizabeth Scott, and she is one of the theatre's most well-known ghosts. Pippa, a former retail merchandiser at the theatre, said, "I was opening up in the old Swan shop on a Sunday morning, which included unlocking the Swan Gallery doors and turning all the lights on. Whilst in the gallery, I looked at an old RSC costume, and I remember feeling cold, but nothing out of the ordinary. When I returned to my colleague, she said she was surprised to see a visitor viewing the gallery so early in the morning. I said it was only me up there, but she insisted she saw a lady standing behind me while I looked at the costume. The lady wore a long grey dress, and it was all captured on CCTV. However, I knew there was no one else in the room but me." Another regular encounter at the theatre continues to be the perfumed lady. She has been observed by front of house staff in the upper circle, and is a frequent presence around the Swan Theatre, switching the bridge lights on again, no matter how many times they are switched off and checked to be in perfect working order. One of the stage managers recalls an occasion when audience members were filing into the auditorium just before the play was due to start. A man casually walked from the foyer to the backstage area. Staff tried to stop him, thinking he was someone who didn't know where to go and was heading in the wrong direction. However, he disappeared. The stage manager and her colleagues believe he was the ghost of an actor who knew the backstage area very well. That is my chapter on the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Now, it is also known that actors are very superstitious, and they often carry out strange rituals before they go on stage. And the superstitions about Macbeth are well known, even among actors who claim, "Rubbish, I don't believe that," because I have heard some stories. I actually interviewed the director of Playbox Theatre in Warwick for one of my previous books, a novel, and I interviewed him all about the acting world, and I asked him about Macbeth, and he told me a few stories. He said, "Well, I thought, this is nonsense, I don't believe this." And then he told me something that happens in one of their productions there. So it's well known that actors are rather superstitious, and I have heard a number of other stories about the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. I was told them on the Stratford-upon-Avon town ghost walk, but sadly they would not allow me to use their stories in my book, which was rather a shame because there were some superb stories there, and one of them involved a workman on the scaffolding above the, I think it's the upper circle of the theatre during the transformation project. So there you are, even workmen on building sites, all sorts of people have these curious experiences. Sophia is asking, what kind of research did I do to prepare for this book? Well, first of all, it all began with me just visiting so many places in Warwickshire that I grew to love, and I returned to them again and again. Fortunately, we live near Kenilworth Castle, we live near Warwick Castle, but there's many others. There's all the National Trust properties, there's Coton Court, there's Baddesley Clinton, there's many wonderful National Trust properties, Stoneleigh Abbey, which is strongly associated with Jane Austen. So I visited these places again and again, and I think what drew me back to them was what I call spiritual resonance, which I define as a feeling of emotional connection to a place, which I think arises from the stories of all the people who have lived out parts of their lives there and have been associated with the place. So then I started to write a series of blog posts about these places, and I have a series called Places of Inspiration. And a little later on, a friend of mine, and he's one of the ladies here listening today, did actually suggest that I put these some of these stories into a book. So that's really how it began, and I thought, okay, I can do that, and I thought I could confine myself to Warwickshire, and it developed from there really, and I researched the history of the places and felt that I just loved the stories associated with the properties. And when I eventually submitted to a history publisher, they wanted it for their paranormal series, so I was happy to do that. Ruth is asking, were people happy to talk to you about their paranormal experiences? And yes, it's quite curious. I think once people realise that you're willing to listen and you're not making a judgment about this story and you're listening with respect, they will tell these stories. And quite sometimes it will be something that happened to them years ago. They've never really spoken about it much because they're worried that people will laugh at them or, you know, not take it seriously. So, the other interesting thing is that some of the stories in the book have come from people. They've discovered I was writing this book, and they said, "Oh well, you might be interested in my experience that I had at such time." And I would say, "Yes, I am," and I would go round and I'd with my little audio recorder and record them telling their story. Fran asks, which is your favourite place that you've researched? Oh my goodness, that is difficult. I did enjoy Stoneleigh Abbey. I've been there several times. It has a most wonderful history guide. He does a history tour, and he does a Jane Austen tour. I enjoyed that one because of his stories in the library, which are the library there is strongly associated with Chandos Lye, who was the first Baron Lye of the new creation, and he was a poet. He was a romantic poet and a friend of Lord Byron, and he did publish many poetry books during his lifetime, but he never hit the big time like his friend Lord Byron. And I think I just feel a strong sense of empathy really for Chandos. But this library he loved the library. He spent a lot of time in it. And there's numerous very curious experiences that are recorded in the library, and they are told beautifully by the history guide, and I do actually I repeat his stories in my book, so that's one of my favourites. Sophia asks, does your book depict that Warwickshire is a place of superstition and mystery? I don't think I show that it's a place of superstition particularly, but to be quite honest, I think these stories they're known all throughout the country. I think people everywhere will come up with stories, I think, associated with different places. Warwickshire, I've chosen to relate this to Shakespeare. And Shakespeare's theme of ghosts and spirits, but with every chapter of the book I have found a Shakespeare quotation which I feel resonates with how I feel about the place, and the more I did that, the more amazing it became. Shakespeare covered the full range of human emotions and experiences, and I suppose it's not surprising really, but it just seemed to enrich or throw into sharp relief how I felt about the place. Oh, hello Frida, glad to see you here. And Alison, pleased to see you here. Sophia has asked, what does paranormal mean? Well, I simply think paranormal simply means an experience which simply cannot be scientifically explained. So Fran says, as you're talking to us about the paranormal, where do all the socks go? Well, the curious thing about this is there are people who swear blind that when they put things down in certain places, they absolutely know where they put them. They go back again and they have disappeared. And yes, that can be your socks. But there are some stories in the book in very ordinary places. It's not all, grand manor houses and castles and churches and abbeys. And there's one amazing story in Nuneaton, and it was retail premises, which was for many years run as the Entertainment Exchange. And the lady who used to lease those premises had the most amazing story of a whole series of events. And you'd be amazed the things that happened to her CDs, her piles of CDs, and lots of other things as well. So I'll leave that story for you to read when you buy the book. Nick says, have you ever seen a ghost personally? No, I haven't. And I will say that I try to, within this book, I do try to adopt a fairly objective, open-minded, sceptical viewpoint. I do try to, but I do respect the experiences that people describe. But no, I have never seen a ghost myself, but I know people who have, and who have had numerous other experiences of this nature. So Philippa is saying that she thinks the disappearing socks and teaspoons are the borrowers. Very much so. Yes, no explanation. Disappearances of, what is this, a breadboard, a pair of brand new shoes purchased by Ruth's husband, and a bread knife, all from a tiny flat, no explanation. So I wonder if this would be one of those mischievous ghosts and spirits. And so Ruth says there is a shoe zone in Felixstowe which has a presence in the back, and the staff all get on well with it and put up with the occasional moving of shoes around. Yes, you do have, we can experience things like this, yes, definitely. So, let me see if there's any other questions. Philip wants to know whether I meant the Scottish play when I referred to that certain play that actors are superstitious about. Yes, and it's known by other names as well, the Bard's play. Interesting. And I think actors feel that they mustn't mention it within the theatre where the play is having a run. So I understand. Right, so if there's Sophia asks, what audience would you say your book would attract best? Well, inevitably it will attract people who love ghost stories, and when they travel around the country, they go into the gift shop and they discover there's a book telling them about paranormal this and haunted that, and it will be people like that. But in addition, I hope it will be appealing to people who love Shakespeare, and I hope it will appeal to people who just love travel photography and history as well, because I do focus upon the history of the places that I write about. Coton Court is a fascinating one, and Coton Court, the Throckmortons, a devotedly Catholic family for many generations, were closely associated with the Gunpowder Plot. So within Warwickshire there are many properties which really are at the heart of English history. And of course Warwick Castle, the Earls of Warwick, for many years they were at the heart of English history. So I would hope that my book would also appeal to people who love English history. So let me see if there's any other questions. Victoria wants to know if I have plans for another book. Well, I am hoping to be able to write a book called Illustrated Stories of Warwickshire, and that would be more about folklore, various strange happenings, a whole variety of things, curious tales. And I have already started researching that, and I've been looking into the Warwickshire County archives, and there are some fascinating stories which I can cover, and these wouldn't necessarily be ghost stories. I'm also planning, I've finished a novel, and it's a magical realist novel, and I'm in the middle of writing another one. So I have two projects. Philip says, how do you think people should react to ghosts? Should they react with fear? But that is rather curious, because some people are absolutely terrified, and other people just seem to say, particularly pubs, pub ghosts. You often hear about pub owners saying, "Oh, he's quite a friendly presence. We're quite happy," and they're on quite familiar terms with their ghosts. So yes, people do have a variety of responses. Personally, if I did experience anything of that sort, I probably would be terrified. But the irony is that I went round a property in Stratford-upon-Avon, which used to be called Falstaff's, and it's now called Tudor World, and that is probably about 500 years old. And there do tend to be several places in this country which earn the title of most haunted place in England. Certainly this place is one of the places that earns the title of most haunted place in England, and that's probably built up by television programmes. But one day I went round it by myself, and there weren't many people around, and I thought, right, let's see if I'm going to experience anything. And quite honestly, I didn't. I walked round it. They've got lots of objects on display, some of which are macabre, because of course all these town tours, they would like to centre upon the macabre aspects of our history. So there's a lot of that kind of thing on display there. And I walked round nearly by myself, and quite honestly, I didn't experience anything. So there you are. Mind you, if I had experienced something, I might have been quite scared. Fran wonders if I could show a couple of the photographs. Right, well this one is, that's the chapel of Lord Leicester. You might not see it very easily here. Might not see it. The chapel of Lord Leicester Hospital in Warwick, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful chapel, and one of the loveliest locations in Warwick is, of course, the you might not be able to see this clearly. It's Thomas Oaken's house, which is very near Warwick Castle. You come out of Warwick Castle by the town gate, Castle Lane, and there's Thomas Oaken's house, and that was owned by a most benevolent Elizabethan merchant, Thomas Oaken, and I write about him in my book too. And he was once the equivalent of the mayor of Warwick, and he left an enormous legacy to the people of Warwick. He left all his fortune to the people of Warwick, and it's still benefiting people today. And Thomas Oaken's house is now occupied by the tea rooms, and of course I had to go in there to do my research. And some of my favourite research was going to various tea rooms, various locations, one of which was Ettington Park, a Gothic manor outside Stratford-upon-Avon, which has a reputation of being haunted. So we're coming back now to pub ghosts. And Wendy thinks the pub ghosts are probably blind drunk all the time, which is why they're so cheerful. Sophia wants to know if there's anything for the Christian audience that is appealing in my book. Yes, I do try to maintain a spiritual outlook on all this, and in fact some of the stories in my book come from Christians. In particular, the very last story in the book, which takes place in Leamington Spa and is quite fascinating. And in that case, somebody in Christian ministry did come in to pray for the house in question. So yes, there is the Christian viewpoint is well represented in the book. Yes, Fran is mentioning that the Lord Leicester Hospital, the most beautiful building, it's very popular with film film scouts, and often we often see television programmes, television drama teams, and feature film teams there. Doctor Who was filmed there. The BBC version of A Christmas Carol was filmed last year, and the popular TV drama Shakespeare and Hathaway is filmed there. But it is very beautiful. It's about 13th century building. Certainly there are a lot of lovely historical properties in Warwick itself. So I think that may be all the questions that we would like to ask. So I want to thank you very much for coming along this afternoon. This is the first time I've done something like this, so I'm very grateful to you for coming along and showing such an interest. And I do hope that you will want to buy the book, and that if you do, that you will greatly enjoy it. Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye. Should end this.